James, you mentioned Hurricane Melissa. A lot of eyes on Hurricane Melissa. Now, a historic Category 5 storm. Hurricane Melissa is right now edging towards Jamaica and is set to make landfall again as a Category 5 with wind speeds of more than 160 miles per hour. As folks, they're braced for this devastating storm. We heard from officials there in Jamaica on preparations ahead of the storm and what I guess we should be looking out for, what the folks there should be looking out for. So let's take a listen in case you missed it.
It is expected that entry, that landfall, will take place early on Tuesday. That means within 24 hours, tomorrow morning. It could actually be during the early hours before the sun. Is there a sun? We haven't seen it for a few days. but when at sunrise, we still have that time that we call sunrise, whether it rises or not. And so at that time, we should be seeing that there is a landfall of the center of this hurricane. A landfall means, yes, that the center is moving across the coastline, but it also means that the areas around that coastline are going to be most impacted. Around that eye will be most impacted. So parts of eastern Westmoreland, parts of western St. Elizabeth, and then surrounding areas of those moving as it continues to move, the closest areas to that center will get the greatest impact. We'll get the strongest winds reaching hurricane force. So hurricane force winds are expected over parts of Westmoreland as well as St. Elizabeth. The extent of hurricane force winds is just about 80 kilometers, I believe, because it's about 40 on either side of the center. So that's the extent of hurricane force winds. Depending on where that center is, we will you can measure whether your area is likely to experience it. But of course, there is some shift in exactly where that landfall will take place. Then the tropical storm force winds extend a much greater distance and should cover the entire island, or most of the island. To the east will be impacted by tropical storm force winds, even though the center is not moving across your area. So if you think that you live in Kingston and you will not experience the eye, and so you are free from fear or worry or concern, I don't encourage fear or worry, but I do expect you to be concerned about what is taking place. If you think that you are free from that, think again, because the heavy rains will also affect you. The strong winds reaching tropical storm force could still continue to affect you as we go through the day on Tuesday. That's all the way through tomorrow. The exit of this system is likely to take place in the evening hours on Tuesday as well, so it's not expected to remain over the island until Wednesday, because there will be a slight increase in the wind speed, in the direction of in the speed of movement of the system. Right now it's still moving at only about 6 or 7 kilometers per hour, but it should pick up a little bit as it is moving across us, and so we expect only about 6 to 8 hours as it moves from the south coast to the north coast. The rainfall is what is being shown. The projected rainfall is what is being shown on this chart that you're seeing here. This is showing that you could have anywhere up to 30 inches of rainfall over much of the country. And that includes all central parishes, it includes eastern parishes, and to some extent, some sections of western parishes could see that. If you're in hilly terrain, you should also look out for even more rainfall, because in hilly terrain, the rainfall amounts are expected to be higher. Of course, we expect that you will have a lot of flooding from this. And you can see on the picture that all of the island will experience even up to 20 inches of rainfall over sections of your area. So if you are in a flood-prone area, anywhere across the country, you can expect that flooding is going to occur as long as the system moves in the direction that is projected. Landslides are also a very real possibility and likelihood, because as the soil is saturated and as the soil is loose, we are expecting that we will have landslides as well. Moving on, this picture shows a little bit about the storm surge that is expected. And there are some areas that are being highlighted where we see in the Black River area, that is where the highest likelihood of storm surge is at this point, based on the current projection of the track. The center should be just west of there, and therefore they would have the greatest likelihood of experiencing higher storm surges, getting up to like 16 feet. That's a possibility, or 14 feet, I should say, in that area. As you move along the coast, of course, there are some areas that might not be impacted significantly by storm surge, especially if you don't have a gradual slope onto the land, but you might have a cliff face. But if you're moving into the Portland Cottage area, Salt River area, because you're in that little inlet, you also have a strong likelihood of experiencing some storm surge. It would not be as high as experienced over in the west, but you should also look out for some surge occurring in those areas of Clarendon and going into the Old Harbor Bay area. That's a possibility. Also in the vicinity of, as we move closer to Kingston, as St. Catherine as you move from across the border from St. Catherine into Kingston, St. Andrew, along the coast, could also experience some amount of storm surge. And that is basically it in terms of the technical aspects of this presentation. I just want to encourage all of us to have faith in this time, believe that we will get through it, and we will get through it together. Nobody is on their own. If you feel that you're on your own, reach out to somebody. And if you see somebody who is alone and who seems very depressed at this time, seems very anxious, please reach out and offer some words of assurance, because this is not the end. It's the end of my presentation, but it's not. But it is not the end of our time here on this earth. We will move past it, and it's not all doom and gloom. That we can still hope for that shift in the track toward the west that would take the center off the coast of the island. So I'm leaving you with that last message. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Evan, for that update. As usual, I'm going to take the questions for Evan. If anybody has any questions, we will get back to more questions at the end. So I just want to check if anybody has any questions. All right, over there. How are we going to get the microphone over to you? And please say your name and introduce which entity you are with.
Mic check, mic check, mic check. You hear? Oh, okay. You hear me. Okay. Morning, everybody. Mahiri Stewart, Nationwide News here. Question for Mr. Thompson. In terms of the system's movement once it hits Jamaican terrain, in the event of a landfall, so it leaves the waters and it reaches our terrain, the hilly terrain, the valleys, all the different characteristics that we have, how will it reaching landfall affect its movement as it goes across the country?
Thank you for the question, Nationwide News. What happens when a hurricane moves off the water is that it loses its main source of energy. The warm sea surface temperatures is what really fuels these hurricanes. That's the primary thing that fuels them. When they move overland and there is no source of water, they tend to plateau or start to weaken. If there is a lot of friction on the land, if it's not just flat land that they're moving over and there are lots of hills, that also helps in kind of weakening the system. So that's why we often see systems moving from the east when they move over Haiti and the mountains of Hispaniola, that they tend to weaken significantly. Over in the western end of the island, although there are hills, they may not be significant to weaken that much. So there will be slight weakening, but we do expect that the system will still be a major hurricane when it exits. Hope I've answered.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, we're going to continue then. I'm not seeing any other questions as yet. And just to all of our students who are watching, you heard some concepts from your geography class, longitude and latitude. Your teachers weren't just teaching you things for teaching you sake. They actually have relevance. You heard Evan using them. And so I'm hoping parents, if you don't know what Evan was talking about, ask your students, your children. They should know. We teach it in school. So we're going to be moving on now after having heard that very sobering assessment from Evan Thompson about this Cat 5 hurricane that is coming towards Jamaica. It's projected to come to Jamaica and will come across the country and will exit Jamaica still as a major hurricane. We're going to now hear from Minister Matthew Samuda, our Minister of Water, Environment and Climate Change, for some additional updates.
Thank you, Minister Dixon, colleague ministers, heads of agency, PS, members of the media, Jamaican listening and watching at home. 165-mile-an-hour winds, 17-foot storm surge, 30 inches of rain in some places is nothing to play with. I think Evan has been trying to bring it home to Jamaicans for the last few weeks. It's almost 2 weeks now based on the slow pace of the storm, the seriousness of the storm, and the potential damage that it can cause. We've started every press conference where I've had the opportunity to speak by simply saying it is not time to panic, but time to prepare. The time for preparation is all but over. The time now is to listen to instructions, certainly if you're within any of the areas for evacuation, and to listen to reputable news sources, certainly the Met Service, JIS, OPM, Prime Minister's accounts, the Ministry accounts, because we're already seeing a lot of false news going around. Areas that are said to be flooded, which are not flooded, which can hamper evacuations and can hamper people trying to get out of harm's way. So we're asking all citizens to listen to reputable news sources that publish the Met Service data and the Met Service guidance, as well as NWA's guidance and of course all the guidance from utilities. Moving into our utilities and certainly NWC, to which I have responsibility for. As at midday, we will start publishing status updates every 3 or so hours in terms of which systems are indeed up and which systems are being impacted. We're already having impact in some systems in eastern Jamaica, which would have gotten the first set of waves where we're experiencing single-phase power. But in those areas, it would not be suitable to mobilize generators yet. So you will start to see, as the storm moves, well, makes a turn, Evan, and goes north and starts to get closer to us and power systems start to go down, you will start to see disruption to water systems, we imagine, later this evening, going into early morning tomorrow. So we are encouraging everyone to backfill their storage, whether it is they have a tank or buckets or whatever it is they're using to put aside clean water. Now is definitely the time to put aside your water for storage and to use sparingly. Every drop will count. I am assured, having met with the senior management team of the National Water Commission this morning, that we are well placed to dispatch our 50-plus generators very quickly after the storm. We're in constant contact with suppliers, we're in constant contact with our emergency-based staff, and we're comfortable with where we are in that regard. I'm also comfortable with the work that we're doing with the JPS. JPS is, as we speak, in some areas, still, I know, doing some maintenance work on lines that go to particularly critical water infrastructure. And that does, I think that is a marked change from Beryl last year. As I said, this is a short update. The time for preparation is almost at an end. We encourage everyone to listen to the notifications and the advisories from reputable sources. We will ask you, post the storm, to be patient as we get the Water Commission systems back up and running. But we do have things in place, we believe, to get to 80% of our customer base relatively quickly. Now, that getting to, as we've said before, does not mean uninterrupted supply. Generators need resting time. Generators do have to be refueled. We will have to monitor these systems very clearly, but it will be a significant improvement from what you would have experienced in Hurricane Beryl. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Samuda. We're going to be going to Minister Morgan now, who will update you on the work that he's been doing with the NWA to prepare us for the storm. Minister Morgan?
Thank you very much, Dr. Morris Dixon, and thanks to the team here at ODPEM, members of the media. I see JSIF. I also see Minister Mackenzie, Minister Vaz. The National Works Agency, through its Emergency Operations Center, has so far received 15 reports from across the island. These reports include falling trees, rockfall, down power lines, and landslides. We've responded and removed the impediments and repaired, or reopened rather, all but one of the roads that have been blocked, and we're actively working to reopen the one that is currently blocked, which was impacted by fallen trees. And I think this one is in St. Anne's Bay near the roundabout. We continue to urge people to exercise extreme caution if they have to be outdoors at this time. Rock falls are an imminent threat. We have seen this along the Little Bay Main Road in St. Mary, and there are other places that are susceptible to this kind of situation, so we urge caution. We've done quite a bit of work across the island in terms of drain work mitigation, and several critical drains across the island have been impacted, have been targeted, and we will continue as long as it's safe to do so. So you would have seen even yesterday, we had a front-end loader in the Sandy Gully trying to continue to create a pathway for the water to move to the sea. On Thursday, we also started work on the channel to the sea in the Sandy Gully. And this section is critical. And I want to explain a little bit as to what we have done at the Sandy Gully. We were in the process of planning a massive rehabilitation of the gully, also a massive desilting program for early next year, but the hurricane did not acquiesce to our timing, and as such we had to move very quickly to the urgent work. The most important thing that we are trying to do is, one, protect the lives and property of the people who live adjacent to the gully past the bridge near Seaview Gardens, and two, the bridge that is on Spanish Town Road, which is a very critical bridge. It connects to the ports. As I said before, it connects to Jamaica's most important health facility, KPH, also Bustamante Children's Hospital, if you're traveling from that side. So it's very important that we not allow that bridge to be damaged if the hurricane does inundate that area. We've removed 500 loads of silt from under the bridge or in the vicinity of the bridge over the last 5 days. Some persons are saying, well, we should clean all the way to the sea. That is 1.5 kilometers from the bridge to the sea, and it is 37 meters wide. If that section that we cleaned was 500 truckloads of silt, think about how many trucks and excavators and backhoes and front-end loaders would be required to remove 1.5 kilometers of silt with a width of 37 meters, a couple thousand trucks. So we have done as much as the engineers have said we can do at this time to create a pathway under the bridge so that water can flow. Based on what we have done, the bridge is safer, the flow is no longer compromised, and while we have done much work to mitigate the impact of the impending hurricane on our infrastructure, we want to appeal to the public, and I know Minister Mackenzie has done so, and Minister Samuda has done so, Minister Vaz. Do not interact with infrastructure that you think is compromised. If the bridge looks shaky, do not attempt to go on the bridge or across the bridge. Do not try to traverse gullies that are flooded. We've had historical evidence of persons in very powerful vehicles seeking to traverse gullies, and they lost the competition. So we're advising the public that this is a serious hurricane. Our gullies cannot be used while they are flooded. We know that persons may be wanting to go to their farms and visit their relatives after the disaster. But we must listen to the bulletins from ODPEM and the other relevant entities to tell us when the infrastructure is safe. The National Works Agency will carry out a very quick assessment of infrastructure after the storm has passed and when it is safe for our teams to do so. Because you see a power line falling does not mean that the lines are dead. And sometimes our teams have to wait on the utility companies to tell us that these lines do not have electricity in them before we can clear the road. And those are some of the things that we have to do before we start clearing. But we'll be doing critical assessment of our important infrastructure, and we'll advise the public when this infrastructure is in a state that it can accommodate persons and traffic. So we are asking citizens to avoid using or approaching any road or bridge or structure that appears to be damaged, cracked, or unstable. And you can report such cases to our emergency center, and I will repeat the number. I will give you the number here: 658-213-2557. That's 658-213-2557 to see.
All right, so that is a press conference from officials there in Jamaica as they prepare for a historic, potentially catastrophic storm, Hurricane Melissa, now a Category 5. Jamaica's Prime Minister Andrew Holness said security forces are in place to prevent any break-in law and order. So again, they are getting prepared for this massive storm. This is a look at the trajectory of that storm. James, I have one question before we go to break.
Sure.
Is there any storm that comes to mind that compares to what Melissa is shaping out to be?
Well, one of the things I said to Chris this morning here on the stream was, metaphorically, when Helene came into the Carolinas, it made islands, isolated communities out of western North Carolina. Jamaica, in of itself, is a literal island that is already isolated from the rest of the world, and this storm's going to come in and further cut off logistics and relief that are going to have to try to come in after this historic storm to help these people get back on their feet.
Oh, wow. Man, if you've been here in the Carolinas, you know the devastation that Hurricane Helene caused there in western North Carolina. So, again, we'll continue to have updates on Hurricane Melissa throughout the afternoon. But we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.